Wonderful to have you along with us on this Monday edition of 2020. Just joining into a fascinating conversation that is going to stretch your understanding of what is going on and how to be able to address some of the issues around pro-life issues. You might have heard reports that just last week in the US, pro-life advocates were being jailed, silenced and persecuted, and we're talking today about what we think about Christians as prisoners of conscience, targeted because they dared to speak the truth about abortion. The crime committed by those three men in New Jersey was that they walked into an abortion centre, offered roses to mothers and urged them to choose life. And for this, they were allegedly violently dragged out by police, thrown to the ground and arrested. Earlier this year, though, you might recall President Donald Trump pardoned a group of pro-life protesters called the DC-9 who were sentenced under Joe Biden's Department of Justice. Now, the DC-9 pro-lifers attempted to prevent abortions in Washington, D.C. and were sentenced to multiple years in prison, meant to silence their dissent until President Donald Trump pardoned them. So, did Donald Trump do the right thing? Did he do the cause of the pro-life movement a favour? And how does the Christian think about being a prisoner of conscience? Well, our special guest today has been jailed 6 times for his Christian pro-life activism, not in the US, but here in Australia. Graham Preston leads Protect Life, and Graham's wife Liz continues to support pregnant women at Priceless Life Centre in Brisbane. Let me just ask you here, coming back to the US case, where we're talking about what's happening with, Donald Trump and the pardons for the DC-9. Now there's more pro-life advocates who have been jailed. And of course, it's changed in the US, hasn't it? You've got Roe versus Wade was overthrown at a national level in the US, and that put the responsibility back onto the states. But the upcoming trial proves that pro-life persecution hasn't stopped at just the national level. It happens in the states. So states in Australia have lots of power when it comes to the abortion laws, Graham. It's not so much a federal issue, but a state level issue, and things that are happening in Queensland. There's so many things I want to ask you, but of course. David Crisafulli, the new Prime Minister, the new Premier in Queensland. I'm getting mixed up here. But David Crisafulli, the Queensland Premier, he's banned talking about abortion on the floor of Parliament. When we talk about the way that executive orders work in the US, isn't that something similar that he looks like he's trying to do?
Well, it's not quite an executive order because they did have a vote as to whether or not that would be accepted, and that's the tragedy of it. It wasn't just simply he who said that should be the case, but it required the votes of all the LNP members to support that to get it through, and they did, every one of them, and many of them had indicated that they were pro-life, but they voluntarily agreed to say for the next 4 years abortion will not be talked about in the Queensland Parliament. Almost unbelievable. I can't even credit that such a ruling is allowed, that any topic can be forbidden from discussion in the Parliament, but apparently that's the case, and they've all agreed to do it.
You stood outside the Queensland Parliament with a sign in that very first sitting week. What sort of message were you delivering?
Yeah, well, I just had a sign that in big letters just had shame Crisafulli, shame LNP, shame Labor, because of course it was Labor that introduced these laws that allowed for abortion up to birth. But with alongside a picture of an aborted baby, a very grisly, awful picture, but I felt that it was necessary to confront the politicians with what they were saying nobody would be allowed to talk about in our Parliament. And I think it is greatly to the shame of our Premier that he did this. I mean, he would say that he was just following up on a promise he made before the election, and because he had said before the election that there would be no debate about changing the abortion law in Queensland, and so he said he was just following up on that. But the pro-life members of the LNP should have all, at that point, said, well, if you're going to ban us from talking about it, we'll jump ship, because there's nothing more important than the Queensland Parliament to talk about than abortion. But they've now accepted it will not be discussed.
Sometimes we talk about a war on free speech, and I think that is happening all over Australia, federally and in the States. But a war on pro-life speech, you could say as much as you want to, in some sense, here out in the public and on the radio, but if they won't talk about it in the Parliament, that's like a war on pro-life speech, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. It's just a shameful thing to have introduced and to ever accepted.
Hey, you go out on the streets, and for listeners, just to create a picture in their minds as to what you have been doing now for decades, and I've known you for decades. You go out on the streets, you're holding up signs. Some people are choosing what shirt they're going to wear out of their wardrobe each morning. You're looking at your selection of signs and thinking, which one will I take out today? Paint a little picture of you standing on a street corner, and you like to do this in the Brisbane CBD. What does it look like when you're standing on the street?
Oh, and in the suburbs, wherever there's a busy intersection, lots of people about. We go to probably about 60, 70 different places around Brisbane. So sometimes, yes, it's in the city where there's lots of pedestrian traffic. Well, you never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. We usually go in the morning, during the morning peak hour, from about 6:45 in the morning to 9 o'clock. And even up to the last moment, something challenging can happen. And so I mean, I could go on all day telling you all the different things that have happened over the years. But just recently, late last year, a fellow this was only 5 minutes before I was planning to leave, he just barged straight into me as he crossed the road, nearly knocked me off my feet, grabbed the signs out of my hand. I grabbed him and he dragged me along, and a whole bunch of people, because a lot of people crossing the street, a lot of people around, stopped, and I ended up letting him go. And to cut the story short, a lady, because I was wondering what to do at this point, he'd gone off with my signs, I didn't even see where he'd got to, but a lady came up to me and she said, "Oh, I know where he works." And I said, "Oh, how do you know?" She said, "Well, I followed him when he went into the building, up to his office, and saw the signs all crumpled up on his desk." And I said, "Oh, that's amazing." And as it happened, he was working for a major, well-known legal firm here in Australia. And she called the police, and the police came, and the police came up to me, and they said, "Right, what's happened?" I explained it, and they said, "Oh, well, the guy's already in custody. He'd handed himself into the police." So I presume he thought this wasn't going to be good for his legal career to be up for an assault charge and theft charge. So some remarkable things like that happen, and good things as well. I mean, positive things. A lady came up not long ago and said how she'd been to the doctor when she was 6 weeks pregnant, and the doctor said, "Oh no, you got a babe. The baby's got a heartbeat now. You can't have an abortion." And she didn't. And she said as she walked off, and the baby, he's now 9 years old, and she was very happy because and this doctor had said the right thing to her, that no. So there are some good doctors out there, but there's a lot of doctors that aren't very good.
What are the bans on pro-lifers right now? And maybe this varies state to state, territory to territory, but we know that there's the 50-metre bubble zone laws around abortion clinics. That's the case, I think, in a number of states. What other sort of bans are there for pro-lifers?
Now, it's not 50 metres, it's 150 metres.
Oh, 150 metres.
Yes, they try to keep you out of sight of the abortion clinic. Apart from that, I'm not aware of any other restrictions. And so, as I said, over the years, I have been arrested just simply for standing on the side of the road. But after this happened, I think 5 times, and the police just dropping charges and so on, the magistrates got very cross with the police and told them off for arresting me and not going on with it, because there was no justification. I was not doing anything illegal by standing on the side of the road with signs. And so now pretty much the police leave me alone.
We've had whole conversations in earlier times of just some of the encounters that you have on the street. And I might say it makes colourful reading to recognise that you are the object of the abuse of an awful lot of people. And you're not even a stranger now to people swerving their cars towards you on the footpath. Perhaps that's just a fear tactic, but you've had this, and even a bus driver recently.
Yeah, it's on one hand, I don't want to make it sound too difficult, because on the other hand, I would like to encourage people to be doing the same thing as I am, and people right around the country. It's a pretty simple thing to do, and challenging, no doubt, but at the same time, I think the worst thing that can happen is that people get totally used to abortion, and it's just going on in the background and nobody thinks about it. We've got to keep it in front of the community's eyes, and that requires people to be prepared to get out there and make a stand. And so, yes, it's difficult, and I'd encourage people to try to find someone else to go with them, but get out there and just speak up on behalf of the unborn.
For you, this is like a career calling, Graham, and you've been doing it for so long now. I don't think you're about to stop anytime soon. Even throwing you in jail doesn't work, so somebody should get that message, because they've tried that 6 times. Hey, let me just, as we just lighten up the thoughts around the end of our conversation here, you're actually a pretty fabulous artist, and you even have one of your pictures hung in the Royal Queensland Art Gallery. I mean, do people put 2 and 2 together? They say, oh, this artist who's painted this portrait is actually Graham Preston?
I don't know, but I would hasten to add, it sounds impressive, the Royal Queensland Art Gallery, and it is a nice gallery, but it's not the Queensland Art Gallery, which is the bigger one. And so, yes, I currently have a picture hanging in the Royal Queensland Art Gallery, and yeah, I do enjoy doing art, and if any listeners want any artwork done for them, I'd be more than happy to assist them.
And they'd connect with you. Is your art separate to the Protect Life website?
Yes.
Just give us, free kick here. How do listeners connect with you because of your art and actually see some of the pictures that you've painted?
Yes, well, you can see my Instagram page and get in touch with me. I'll give you the Instagram address. It's GP, that is GEEPEE .art 7000 in digits, 7000. So GEEPEE.art7000.
Okay, that's for Instagram. And to connect with Graham, protect-life.info is the web address to connect with Graham on that pro-life level, protect-life. You might even want to go and stand alongside Graham, test the waters and see what it's like standing on the street as a pro-life advocate. And I did mention that Graham's wife, Liz, continues to support pregnant women at Priceless Life Centre in Brisbane. There's a website there too, pricelesslife.org, pricelesslife.org. Wonderful getting your insights once again. Graham Preston, thanks for joining us today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil.